Long ago, young ones secure in their Shoshone cradle boards, or konos, were propped against a tree so they could observe family interactions. My family roots are Tongva, a branch of Shoshone and the indigenous tribe of Yangna, or Los Angeles. I grew up as if I was in a kono, closely observing what was happening around me. I saw that my father, my nenak, was a great baseball player. I also saw that he was an alcoholic and abusive, and I projected the image of my father onto all American Indian men. I thought I was glimpsing into my own destiny. I was determined not to let that happen, so I started down a long, meandering path trying to figure things out for myself. Walgrove Elementary. Mrs. Holmes, my 5th grade teacher, believed in me. Despite my silly, attention-seeking behavior, I remember Mrs. Holmes being in tears at parent-teacher conferences, telling my mother, "He has so much potential." Mark Twain Middle School came next, followed by Venice High School. I was busy searching for my identity, my spirit, my pese hagasun. I gained a reputation as a troublemaker. I realized I was never going to fit anywhere in the educational system. In class, I wore a mask of poverty, acting like I was too cool and didn't need help. In reality, I needed understanding and guidance. I felt it was a sign of weakness to ask for it. Did I see teachers who looked like me? Did I have teachers who understood me? Was our history taught in the classroom? No, and yet every school I attended was on our ancestral homeland of Saangna. I didn't thrive in the educational system. The truth is, I barely survived. My parents' generation thought assimilation was the safest and best strategy for their kids to survive. My distorted perception as an American Indian was based on hurtful stereotypes. How could I possibly be both American and Indian, each being at opposite ends of the spectrum? My mother tells me, "Be proud that you're an American Indian, but be careful who you tell." Most of my memories from childhood are of my mom, my Aok, always coping, persevering, and rising to any challenge. I try to block out the early images of her experience with abuse at the hands of my drunken father. I remember her raising the 5 of us alone. We never realized we were poor. My mom would often arrive at home after 8 because she was taking classes. She nurtured our interest and always made sure I had what I needed to play baseball. Years later, I met Lydia, my wife, Memetujo, at the University of Colorado. I was drawn to her resilience, her positive outlook, and strong sense of identity. I was in the Air Force in Denver, but spent every weekend in Boulder. When I met her family, I saw a complete family, not a fractured one like mine. I saw a hard-working rancher teaching his sons as they worked the land. He was not a man of many words. Her father, my Neha, was nothing like my father. He had a 3rd-grade education, yet I respected him for what he instilled in his family. We gave our daughter, our Naaho, the name Rose after her great-grandmother. These 2 roses link generations of family trauma with a future full of hope. Rose softened my heart. I was the first to graduate from college in the hope of starting a family tradition. Rose accepted that torch and became a biomedical mechanical engineer. We know more is yet to come as she passes the torch to other family members and shows what's possible for American Indian youth. I later came to realize that my father's alcoholism and abuse were the long-lasting effects of agonizing pain that most American Indian families experience. Generations of suffering deeply rooted in colonization, near genocide, and other historical traumas since European contact. I remember my father coming to visit my family. It seemed awkward because of our lack of meaningful relationship. During his 2-week visit, we had no deep conversations or reckoning of any kind about our past. It always seemed like it was on the tip of his tongue or mine, but it never happened. His willingness to visit was enough to provide a sense of healing. When he left, my last memory of him was helping him load his luggage. As the train pulled out, I stood by the tracks, feeling the weight of my own baggage being lifted. I stayed until I saw the last puff of smoke from the engine in the distance. Many of the questions, anger, and pain that I had been carrying all of my life left with him on that train. My father passed away the following year. I became a 5th grade teacher like Mrs. Holmes. Eventually, I began to teach American Indian students. Their classroom should be a safe, nurturing nest, a community, a sanctuary where students can be themselves. They don't have to look far to find evidence that historical trauma has wreaked havoc within their own families. I ask them to try not to judge the pain of those they see who have fallen by the wayside, but to learn from it and to try to rise above it. It's been a long, meandering path trying to figure things out for myself. Mrs. Holmes, Lydia, Rose, my father-in-law, my mother, and my father have each taught me things I carry with me as I work with young people. I'm really disappointed to see how little things have changed in the educational system. I'm an advocate for change because I see students seeking their identities, trying to fit in just like I was. It's our duty as teachers to help students find their place, to ensure they don't just survive the educational system, that they lift their masks to see themselves in the mirror and proudly thrive. I see myself as an elder now. I imagine young people in Konos, their eyes upon me, observing all I do in their presence. Every day we recite this affirmation. We are proud Indigenous scholars. We honor our place in the spectrum of time within our culture, our history, our families. To gain perspective on the events and experiences our ancestors endured, we seek sacred wisdom. We will honor our families, our people, and ourselves by seeking harmony, respect, humility, courage, and generosity. We must vigorously search within ourselves for the strength to silence the distractions and obstacles in our lives. We accept the challenge of inspiring hope for the future.